Yo, what is up guys? Welcome to another Wild Rift video, and in today's video I'll be talking about all the new items that are coming to Wild Rift, and these items are an absolute game changer. Some champions that suck right now are gonna be incredibly broken with these new crit items especially. And today's video is not only gonna be done by me, I'm actually gonna be joined by a Wild Rift expert, and one of my favorite Wild Rift players as well, and it's Mozilla. Yo Mozilla!
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Mozilla. I'm a perennial challenger top 200 League of Legends and not League of Legends Wild Rift player. And I'm joining Hells today in this video to just help him out with some of the items he might not know, because I've been playing League of Legends for quite a while, even before I started playing Wild Rift. And I'm just gonna help out explain you guys how these things work.
Yeah, so man, like you can see already we made a few Photoshop things with every single item, and at the left, you can see the item, and I got this from a YouTube channel. I forgot the name, but I'll link it in the description. And at the right, we put a lot of notes on the items, as you can see here. Really good early game, blah, blah, blah. But we'll talk about all these things because these are really important things to know. And if you know these in the beginning, you can absolutely abuse these items, especially in the first few weeks. Because yeah, we're going to be telling you a lot of secret things and secretly broken champions with these items. So the first item is Solari Chargeblade. And Mozilla, what other name did we have for this item?
This could especially be named Yasuo's Chargeblade.
The Yasuo's Chargeblade.
How it's worded.
And why? Why is it the Yasuo's Chargeblade, you say?
This item works really well with this crit doubling passive, because it just allows you to be able to get like 100% crit chance on one item, essentially. That's all you need.
So how does it work? How does it work? Why does Yasuo get 100% crit from this item? Like as first item?
The way Yasuo's passive works, again, it doubles your crit chance, and most crit items are balanced around the way that they give you 25% crit. So you'll have 2 crit items normally to get 100% crit chance. But this item allows you to gain stacks of radiance upon using your abilities. And since Yasuo is using a lot of abilities in laning phase, you will get the 3 stacks of radiance really fast. And once you have 3 stacks, you are energized, and your next basic attack has a 25% increased chance to deal critical strike damage.
Yeah, we're talking about this part right here. So if you get the 3 stacks after using abilities, which is especially going to be good on Yasuo, as he says, because it's very easy to get the stacks, you will gain another 25% crit. And as Mozilla said, you're going to have 50% crit, which actually means 100% crit, because Yasuo doubles crit. So let's talk about other things on this item. Is it an early game item, late game item? When do you really want to get this Solari Chargeblade item?
On Yasuo, it's definitely a first item buy, just because of how strong it could be with his passive combined, as well as the true damage in the early game being really high. 26 is nothing to scoff at. And getting higher by low health targets by 150% is also pretty big. On other champions, it's not as efficient because it doesn't give you any attack damage. It only gives you crit, attack speed, and ability haste, which are not bad stats, obviously. But a lot of 80 crit champions like their attack damage early on. So you are looking to buy this on champions that usually don't buy crit items, like some junglers, because they have the time to use their 3 abilities in the jungle. And once they go for a gank, like Rengar, like Graves, for example, they have the 50% crit chance. Maybe they can sneak an Infinity Edge into their item build as well to get the enhanced crit damage. And this allows them to go for like sneaky, like one-shot builds. Like Rengar can potentially go for this item combined with a Duskblade and Infinity Edge, and suddenly you have 75% crit on your first auto attack.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which really helps you.
And you agree that this is a bad item on ADC champs, because the stats, as we said earlier, are not really the best stats, really, are they? Like it gives you 25% crit, 30% attack speed, and some ability haste. But compared to some other items, really, the stats are like the stats in general are not the best, are they?
Exactly. And coming up, we have like a lot of good options for AD carries. So you shouldn't be fixating yourself too much on this item. If you like keep watching the video, we will talk about some items that might just be like obscenely broken on some AD carries. We don't know yet because we haven't played them, obviously, but on paper, they're really good.
All right. So quick word about this item. Insanely broken on Yasuo. Decent on some junglers like Rengar, Graves. And yeah, it's just in general not the best item, right? Just not the best item.
Yeah.
Alright, so on to the next item, which is the With's End. 45% attack speed, 50 magic resist, and the passive that allows you to do bonus magic damage. What about this item? What is this? What kind of item is this? When is it good? On what champion is it good? Weaknesses? Everything.
Yeah, so I'm really a fan of Wit's End. Like, this is an item that I've been wanting in Wild Rift ever since the game came out. Because it turns out that a lot of ranged champions don't like to build Hex Drinker, because it does not give you any attack speed. It doesn't really pay out for its worth. Like, you're paying a lot of money for essentially just the magic resistance part in and of itself with the shield.
This
and Wit's
one.
End is a cheap. Yeah, Wit's End is a cheap alternative. It only costs 2,700, which allows you to potentially get like this Wit's End and boots, or maybe even Wit's End and components for another item if you get ahead in lane early game. But obviously, this item is really good into AP champions, into champions that might poke you in laning phase. So you need the sustain as well from the passive.
And what kind of champions would you buy this item on? On what kind of champion? Like, it gives you magic resist and it gives you attack speed. So we know it's good against magic damage. But on what type of champion would you get this item?
Obviously, again, this item does not give you attack damage. So you would be looking at champions that utilize attack speed a lot better than others. Like, for example, Vayne does this really well with her true damage passive on the 3 hits. Irelia also does this really well because she gains increased on-hit damage on her passive as well when she's fully stacked. So you can double this up essentially with Wit's End in the mid lane. And this is also not a bad second or third item on champions like Jax, like Master Yi potentially, just to like get some extra survivability in like skirmishes.
I just heard Master Yi. Do you think Master Yi is gonna get way better in the next update? Because he's trash right now. But do you think with the coming items he's gonna be good?
I mean, I'm not a fan of Master Yi, but it could very well be that some of these items work really well with him, especially some of the later ones. But we will have to see, honestly, because Master Yi is such a one-dimensional champion that it's hard to judge this.
So back to this item. Early game item, late game item, what would you say? Do you have to get this before the first dragon, second item, third item? Like, when do you want to get this item?
This item is good in every stage of the game, because it scales really well. 80 on hit is not bad in the mid game and the later stages of the game. And 50 magic resistance is a lot. 50 magic resistance almost rivals the pure magic resistance items you can buy, like Spirit Visage, like the Force of Nature. And having this on a carry just makes you a lot tankier than you should be.
But would you agree that this is a better item in the early game than the late game? Because the later you get in the game, obviously 80 damage is still quite a lot, but it is not going to be as significant as the early 15 damage and 20 damage when you level up. And it's very cheap, and the stats like this is really an item that you're supposed to get before the first dragon real quick, and as you said, other components, and just have a massive power spike, right?
Exactly, because the sustain is also really strong in laning phase. Like, you will never be able to get poked out when you gain like 30 to 40 HP every hit when you're below 50% HP. And again, on champions like Irelia, this in the mid lane against AP champions, this is a must-buy first item. You can snowball so hard when you buy this. It's really good.
What about Jax? I'm thinking Jax with this item, like when you're playing against an ability power matchup, which generally Jax really struggles against, like an Akali, maybe even a Gragas. What if you get this item? Will you be able to win your lane as a Jax against these ability power champions?
There's a chance you might, but the problem with like these matchups, like Akali and Gragas, is they have means to prevent you from auto-attacking them. Like, if you jump on a Gragas, he just knocks you away and he kites you with his barrel. If you jump onto Akali, she stealths up and then she kites around your stun to utilize her abilities properly. So even if this helps you in laning phase, it's still a hard matchup. And I can't say for certain that this item will have Jax in these matchups.
So another thing to note about this item is when the item holder is below 50% health, you heal up. Attack will heal up for the amount of damage that you deal. So the magic damage that you deal from this item, you'll heal it up when the enemy, when you are under 50% HP. So would you say that this item would be really good on tanky champions as well? Like, is this useless on squishy champions? Because you're gonna die very quickly anyways if you're under 50% health. Like, what do you have to say about this part of the passive? The part at the bottom.
Yeah, this is why I would also recommend it for squishy champions really only into a lot of AP threats or in the later stages of the game, because you're essentially buying it for the magic resistance part mostly. On melee champions, you can utilize this passive to 100% of its effect. So essentially, you would always be having the healing at its full value when you're at 50% or lower, which is essentially like half the laning phase if you think about it.
Yeah, it's pretty big, right? Like in the laning phase, if you're playing
sure.
Diana and you get under 50% HP, you can keep trading and keep healing up this amount. It sounds good, but is it also going to be really good? Or is it not really a significant heal?
I think on champions like Diana, you would still rather have the AP because it also buffs your shield, and just having the extra shield HP makes up for not having the healing from Wit's End. But again, on champions like Jax, on champions like Irelia, this is a really good item.
All right. So, interesting item. Let's go to the next item, which is Essence Reaver. This item costs 3,100 gold, which is quite expensive, gives you 40 attack damage, 25% crit, 25 ability haste, and after dealing ability damage, it will deal 10 extra attack damage plus 70% of your crit. And each ability can trigger the effect once for each target. That's a lot. Mozilla, what is this about? Is this a good item? What is it?
So if you look at the stats, it's actually really well distributed. Like in general, 40 attack damage, 25% crit, 25 ability haste, which is again usual for these Spellblade items like Trinity Force, like Iceborne Gauntlet. They give you a lot of ability haste because you're using abilities to trigger the passive.
And it synergizes with the passive, right? After dealing ability damage. So damage from an ability. So if you get the ability haste, obviously you're going to be able to do ability damage more often, right?
Exactly. And this like synergizes with crit items obviously as well, because the damage increases the more crit you have. So you're looking to buy this as maybe like a second or third item, depending on the champions you're playing.
So you never really want to buy this as a first item, I would say, because the more ability haste you get, the better the item, and the more crit you get, the better the item. So basically you need these two things for the item to get better. So would it be a really bad first item to go for Essence Reaver? Or would you...
If you compare it to like an Infinity Edge that you would get instead of this, Infinity Edge gives you 15 more attack damage, which is a lot in the early game.
Yeah.
And it also gives you the enhanced crit damage passive that it has. So it's just a better first item, and it curves really well into an Essence Reaver second item if your champion can utilize this, like Xayah can, for example. She has an attack speed buff on her second ability. So you can just run around with double AD items. You don't need necessarily the attack speed item to make up for this lack of attack speed, because you have it in your kit already. And then suddenly you deal a lot of damage with the Essence Reaver passive.
All right, so what champions are we looking at? I am thinking about Lucian and Corki right now, because these are two champions that spam their abilities and they really benefit a lot from the crit damage. Like, what do you have to say? What kind of champions are looking for an Essence Reaver in their build?
I think Lucian uses this item really well. Xayah does to some extent. We have to see if this conflicts with the Trinity Force passive, because then you might have to shift Corki's build around a bit, because he tends to buy Trinity Force in all of his builds. So you have to look at how good is this item compared to Trinity Force on Corki, which I can't really tell you at the moment because I haven't like mapped out the builds yet, but it could potentially be good on Corki as well.
And what about Trinity Force and then what is it? Infinity Edge and then third item Essence Reaver, where you go for this one as a third item? Would that be something to consider on champions like Corki, or like basically champions that go for the Trinity Force first?
The thing is, it has the same passive name. It has the same Spellblade effect.
Oh.
It's likely they will override each other.
So it likely won't work with a Trinity Force then, or an Iceborne Gauntlet. Or basically the Sheen, right? The Sheen component, isn't it?
Yeah, the Sheen component has a Spellblade effect.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So it's kind of hard to decide whether you want to go for this item or the Trinity Force on the Corki. We're going to have to see that one. So what we have to say about this item, very strong, but expensive. Basically like the Trinity Force, right? It's a very strong item, but it's just quite expensive. It's going to take a while to get that power spike of the item because it's 3,100 gold. But when you do finish off the item, it's very powerful, right? And it scales incredibly well into the late game.
Exactly. Like this item can just turn around your build entirely once you hit it as your power spike.
What about 5th item, Essence Reaver, where you just play an ADC, where you get some crit, where you get the Mortal Reminder or the other items, and then as your very last item you get the Essence Reaver. Do you think that would be worth it, or is the Essence Reaver really going to be a core item for these for a lot of ADC champions, or is it really going to have to revolve around this, the passive, the ability usage?
I think it revolves around the ability usage a lot, because champions like Jinx, like Tristana, don't use their abilities as much. So you will likely not get a lot of use out of this, even if you buy it as your 5th item. And again, ADCs are getting so much love this patch. They're getting so many different items for different situations. It might just not be worth to buy this as 5th item when you have so many other good options.
Yeah, we got a lot more items. So yeah, let's go to the next item then, which is Navori's Quickblades. And as you can see, this item also costs 3,100 gold, 45 attack damage, 25% crit, 15 ability haste, and deft strikes. Critically strike, reduce your basic ability cooldowns by 15%. Now this sounds insane to me, man. Like, what do you have to say about this?
So I've been waiting for this item like a long time as well. I love playing Tryndamere. I played in challenger lobbies. I played on my Smurf that has like an 80% win rate on Tryndamere. I just love Tryndamere in general. It's a really fun champion, and this item really helps him get into the meta.
So I just want to say something real quick. It's funny how you immediately talk about Tryndamere when we haven't even talked about the item yet. You just immediately mentioned Tryndamere. Why is that? Why do you immediately talk about Tryndamere with this item, with the Navori Quickblades?
Tryndamere's passive has like a similar effect to Yasuo's, to where it increases your crit chance, but it doesn't work with existing crit chance. It just gives you crit chance when
it just gives you crit chance, yeah.
Stacked. Exactly. When your Fury is fully stacked, you have increased crit chance. And the way your spin works, your 3rd ability, every time you critically strike, you reduce its cooldown by 2 seconds. Now, if you have like 100% crit chance, which you will get if you have 2 items and your passive stacked, or in late game situations, even just having 1 item and your passive stack will get you to like 90% crit. And just using this item, Navori Quickblades, with your 3rd ability, just gives you a lot of cooldown reduction. It gives you a lot of spins in team fights, which allows you to get more auto attacks, which allows you to get more spins, and this just snowballs really hard.
It's just insane on Tryndamere, basically. It just perfectly synergizes with his kit. So exactly. Would you say that this is going to be like the core item for Tryndamere, the first item that you want to go for?
I don't think it's the first item because of the way the passive works. You need some crit, and Tryndamere's passive in the early game does not give you enough crit. It just scales into the late game really well.
So I quickly want to ask you another question. In general, this is not a first item, right? This is just not a first item. Never.
No, this is never a first item, I would say.
Okay.
Because there are better options as the first item.
Because again, this is one of these items that scales really well with a certain stat, and this item scales with crit. So the item itself gives you 25% crit, but obviously when you already have crit, when you already have an Infinity Edge, for example, and maybe a Rapid Fire Cannon, you're gonna have 75% critical chance, thus allowing you to reduce a lot of your cooldowns from your abilities, because you're gonna have a 75% chance to crit, making your ability cooldowns reduced by 15%. So this is going to be a 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th item, right? And here we wrote down, get 2 crit items first, plus armor penetration if necessary, and then you get the Navori Quickblades. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. Because like we were talking about Essence Reaver as 5th item, this is a 5th item on almost like on a lot of AD carries, because it just helps you get your cooldown. Like on champions like Lucian, you can get this as your 3rd item. On Xayah, you can get this as your 3rd or maybe 4th item. On champions like Tristana, this can be your 5th item, because just getting more bombs out and more attack speed buffs and everything is also really good on Tristana, but you need a lot of crit beforehand, obviously. But mostly Lucian, mostly Xayah, maybe Corki, we don't quite know, because it gives you a lot of ability haste and attack damage as well, which Corki likes.
So yeah, about this item, this is gonna be a very late game item. Is this gonna be a game changer? Do you think this item is gonna be a game changer in the late game, or do you just think it's just a nice addition to the game, but not really a game changer?
I think again, it's gonna be a game changer on probably Lucian and probably obviously Tryndamere, but most AD carries will just make a big circle around this item. because it costs 3,100 compared to like the 2,800
Yeah.
Zeal items. So it's still like 300 gold. That's too many waves that you need to farm before you can get this item. So maybe the early power spike will be better from other items. But in general, this item is insane late game, and potentially like mid game on some champions.
So something very important to note, I would say, about this item is don't rush it. Like, as we wrote down here, get 2 crit items first. Because if you get 1 crit, it's still okay with 1 crit item, but when you get 2 crit items, you're gonna have 75% crit chance, thus making the passive super good. But still, you have to think by yourself, after the 2 crit items, do I need armor penetration or can I get this item? Because when people rush 3 crit items immediately, it can be very devastating if the enemy has a tank, because you're gonna be dealing 0 damage to a tank. That's why we're saying that this is likely gonna be your 4th or maybe even 5th item, the Navori Quickblades, right?
Exactly.
Like, you don't go for this as your 3rd item after 2 crit items, unless, of course, the enemy has 0 tanks. It could be a possibility, as Mozilla mentioned, on Lucian or Xayah. Alright, on to the next one, which is Serylda's Grudge, which costs 3,000 gold. It gives you 40 attack damage, 15 ability haste, and it gives you the Last Whisper passive, which gives you 30% armor penetration. Bitter Cold, dealing ability damage or enhanced basic attacks can slow affected units by 30% for 1 second. Ooh, so this is an armor penetrating item. We used to only have Mortal Reminder, but this is an alternative to Mortal Reminder. So what do you have to say about this one, Mozilla?
Mortal Reminder has been like a staple in almost every single 80
every 80 build, yeah,
build.
Always.
It gives you a bit more attack damage than Serylda's Grudge does, obviously. It gives you 5 more attack damage. But Serylda's Grudge also gives you the 15 ability haste, in which case you have to look at how much do you need the Grievous wounds for Mortal Reminder, and can you buy this as an alternative? Because if the enemies don't have a lot of healing, it's almost always better to have the slow from Serylda's Grudge, even if you're losing the 5 attack damage, even on champions that don't use a lot of abilities, because just having a bit of slow in your kit can just turn around teamfights pretty massively.
Yeah, whenever you do ability damage, so when you use an ability, you slow the unit by 30% for 1 second. I mean, it's quite significant actually. 30% for 1 second, it allows you to hit like 1 or 2 more basic attacks on the enemy, which could allow you to catch them out. So, about this item, it's an alternative to Mortal Reminder, as we mentioned. Basically, the difference is it gives you a little bit of less damage, and it doesn't give you Grievous wounds. So you're trading 5 attack damage and the Grievous wounds for this passive, and for the ability. So you get 15 ability haste and the slow. So I would personally say that this is a better item. This is just generally going to be a better item, unless of course you really need the anti-healing, right? So this is always going to be better than the Mortal Reminder.
Yeah, but you have to think about, there's a lot of healing in the game at the moment. A lot of champions buy physical healing items. Like the Blade of Ruling King is a very popular item.
Yeah.
And they use runes that amplify their healing, or they have a support like Nami, like the Janna, like the Lulu, that can also provide you with healing. So it's hard to weigh this. You have to think about the possibilities inside the game. So you have to make up your mind, do I need Mortal Reminder here? Yes or no? Otherwise, I go Serylda's Grudge.
Alright, so when I saw this item, there was one champion that I immediately thought of, which is Ezreal. Whenever you shoot your first ability on Ezreal, which is on like what, a 1.5-2 second cooldown in the late game, you get that slow. Is that right? Is this gonna be an insanely broken item on Ezreal?
It probably will be on the desktop version of League of Legends. Like, Ezreal uses this item really well. It also slows on his ultimate, so you can potentially get like a multi-man slow across the map if you're like the American Sniper, who knows? And also champions like Lucian use this really well in their combo, because people can't suddenly escape from you anymore because you have a 30% slow once you like hit them with one ability. And you gain your movement speed from your second ability as well when you auto attack them or you hit them with your ultimate. And potentially Senna uses this item well, just because Frozen Mallet is going to get removed this patch in 2.0.
The core item of Senna, they're going to remove it. Why would they do that? This is going to be an alternative, however.
I know you really like playing Senna, so maybe you can experiment with these item builds a little bit on Senna. Maybe you can sneak this in.
So that's your second item. But so I have to ask this for the viewers. I've already asked this to Mozilla and it's kind of disappointing, but Jinx, when you keep switching the rockets, are you gonna get the slow?
No,
When you keep switching your first ability?
Jinx doesn't work this way because Riot Games isn't stupid, essentially. If this were the case, like you could be stacking your Sheen, you could be using tier items like Mana Muna efficiently on her. So swapping the ability does not give you an enhanced auto attack. I don't know how it works with items like the rapid fire cannon. Maybe that counts as an enhanced auto attack, but would that really be enough if you think about it? Since you already have a slow on your kit as Jinx and a snare as well.
Yeah, so basically this item doesn't work on Jinx, unfortunately, right? You're never really gonna buy this item on Jinx.
Probably not.
I had to ask it though, people had to know. Alright, on to the next item. Staff of Flowing Water, and this is an ability power item. It gives you 65 ability power. We don't know how much it costs, by the way, but we think that it's gonna be cheap. It gives you 350 mana, 20 ability haste, and healing or shielding allied champions grants you and them 20 ability haste and 20 up to 40 ability power based on the target's level for 4 seconds. So this is obviously a support item. What do you think about this item?
Yeah, and the reason we think it's going to be cheap is because it is a support item, and support items don't gain a lot of gold. So their items tend to be like around the 2,700 to 2,900 range. So it's potentially cheap enough for you to get it at first dragon if you're like really fat. But most supports obviously go for their boots enchant first. But in general, this item is really good. I really like this item because it allows you to potentially get these double AP champ bot lanes when you have like an enchanter support and like a Ziggs, maybe an Orianna, who knows, or a Corki also profits from this a lot, just getting the extra ability power and ability haste. Like you can use this item in so many ways.
So let's just quickly explain how this item works. Basically, it's like if you have a Sona or something and she heals you in the lane, you and the Sona get 20 ability haste, and you're gonna get ability power based on your level for 4 seconds. So you get the ability haste and the bonus ability power, right?
Exactly.
So
if the Sona happens to heal multiple targets, all of them gain the ability power. And
so if she heals 4 of her allies in a team fight, they all get the ability haste and the ability power. Is that right?
Yeah.
Damn, that sounds insane. But another thing to note about this item, is this item gonna be good when you play with an attack damage carry? You know, a carry who builds attack damage like Jinx, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, whatever. Is this gonna be a good item, or is this never gonna be a good item when you have an attack damage carry? As a first item, by the way, I'm talking.
As a first item, probably not.
Never, right?
You're looking at a lot of better options on your first item, like the Ardent Sensor or the Harmonic Echoes for the extra healing. So it's hard to fit this in as a first item, but it could potentially be a second or third item depending on your team.
Because in team fights, yeah. With Sona, you always want to get this item, right? You always want to get this as either your second or your third item, just because how incredibly well it is with Sona. Also, Seraphim with the big healing that she has, right?
Yeah.
So how about this? Yeah, sorry, you talk.
The way this item works is even if your champion does not scale well with ability power, some champions have ability power in their kit, even if they're not scaling well with it. Like Irelia has ability power damage on her third ability and her ultimate, and just suddenly dealing like 40 extra damage in your combo in the highest level of play can turn things around entirely in a team
also
fight.
Kai'Sa, right? With the first ability, for example.
Exactly. Kai'Sa, if you give this to your tank Gragas, suddenly he's going to be dealing more damage, even though he's building tank items. You know, this just like works really well with some champions.
So here we wrote down, it opens up the Dragon Lane meta. And we wrote down AP carry. So we talked about it. Sona Seraphim duo, Sona, you said it earlier in the video, Sona Ziggs, Sona Orianna. Is that gonna be a thing with this item? Where you just build this as your first item and just like buff your ability power carry?
I think if you're playing duo queue or trio queue with your friends or like people you want to climb with, or at the highest level of play, you can use this pretty effectively, I'd say. If you have like a Seraphine Ziggs lane, for example, you poke a lot. You have a Lux Seraphine lane, a Lux Ziggs lane, like all these poke champions in the duo lane that can really force people out of lane, could potentially get really strong. And then the enemy AD carry would have to buy an item that we talked about earlier, and that's Wit's End. So these items like are made to balance each other out pretty well.
Okay, that's good. And here we wrote down, does it work with Font of Life, the rune? Because it works with Font of Life on the PC version of League of Legends, right?
Yeah, exactly. On
so
the
where
PC
you,
version of
where your ally procs the Font of Life, then he'll get the bonus as well. So not only when you actually heal him or shield him, but when your ally procs the Font of Life, they also get the bonus, right?
Yeah, if you hit a target, you mark them with your Font of Life, and if your ally hits them, it should work this way. I'm not certain if they change it for Wild Rift because it might be a little bit too strong. The devs have to think about how this exactly works, but on Desktop League, it does work that way.
Damn, that makes me think that Lux is going to be insanely broken again. Where you go for Staff of the Flowing Water, Lux, and then with a Ziggs or something. Ooh, that's going to be insane damage. So another question about this item. Early game item or late game item? Does this matter a lot in the early/late game where you get 20 in the early game and it only scales up to 40 actually?
It's obviously stronger in the early game, but ability haste is also really good in the later stages of the game. And most of the time, like supporters will not be able to get like their 6 item combos completed. So you will look at this as a second or third item, or on some champions like Lux, potentially a first item. Which will be essentially pulling throughout the entire mid game to the late game. So this is like an all-rounder item essentially.
Okay, so it's good in the late game too, also because in the late game you're going to be having more team fights, which allows you to give a team-wide barrier or shield, right? As we talked about with the Sona, for example. Like, even though 40 might not be a lot in the late game, you give it to your entire team, which still is going to bring a lot of value, right?
Yeah, suddenly the 40 becomes like 120, and 120 is Rabadon's level of AP.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, on to the next item, which is Stormrazor. It costs 2,900 gold, gives you 25 attack damage, 25% crit, and 20% attack speed. That's not a lot, is it? That's not a lot of that. Those stats are pretty low.
Yeah, if you compare to like the Essence Reaver that we had before, the Navori Quickblades, they all give you like around 40 attack damage.
Here it is. This gives you 40, 25, and then 25 ability. This one only gives you 25 attack damage. So let's actually read the passive, because this should compensate for it, right? So Energized. And what Energized... Oh yeah, but let's actually read it. Energized. Moving and basic attacking generates Energized stacks. When fully energized, your next basic attack deals 50 to 120 bonus magic damage on hit. Basically the same way that Static Shift and Rapid Fire Cannon work, where you move around and basic attack, you get the bonus stacks. So you're going to be able to hit the enemy, deal bonus damage. And this is what it's all about. You paralyze the enemy, you slow them by 75% for 1 second. So this is the whole point of the item. This is why the stats are low and everything. So what do you have to say about this?
Like the slow is really massive if you think about it. 75%. If you compare it to like the Serylda's Grudge slow, it's only 30%.
Almost a snare, actually.
Exactly, like 75%. That is almost Nasus with a level of snow. You know, if you think about it like that, if you have a Graves that builds this item in the jungle, he just dashes in lane, auto attacks you once, and suddenly you're slow for 75%.
Graves, you said.
Speed. Yeah, Graves. Maybe even Rengar, like in combination with the Solari's Spellblade, I think it was the name. Actually, I can't remember the name.
Yeah, Solari's Quickblade. I don't know. Solari's Chargeblade, however it is.
Chargeblade, yeah. In a crit-centered like Graves build, for example, this item can really help you out a lot to catch on to targets so they can't get away from you. On normal AD carries, I would not recommend this item because you just have a lot of better options that give you better stats. Unless you want to rely, like Corki could potentially buy this item in combination with a rapid fire cannon, just for the slow effect to like poke out people better. If you get like a long range auto attack, you can hit your abilities on him from even further range without them being able to dodge it. But in general, I would say this is a situational item.
So let's talk about this item being like, when do you buy this item? I assume you would never buy this as your first item, right? Because, you know, like, even if you slow the enemy, this is the stats are just so low. Is this gonna be a first item, or is this gonna be a second, third, fourth item?
Because of the way that energized effects work, and they can critically strike when you already have some crit chance, you probably want to buy this as your second or third item, depending on like what type of build you're going for, or maybe just like skip it entirely, because, or, you know, buy it as a fifth item, because in some situations you want more armor penetration, then you can't fit this item into your build with your other core items, so it just gets pushed back further and further up until the point where you would rather have like a defensive item. You know, it's really hard to fit this into like the build properly.
So about this item, basically you want to build it when you already have enough damage, right? You want to build it when you already have enough damage, but you cannot catch out the enemy. Is that what it's good at? Like when you're playing Jinx, for example, and you're against a very slippery enemy, like you just cannot catch them out, but you deal enough damage, you just get the Stormrazor for that slow, and you're gonna be able to slow them and kill them. Is that the point of this item, or am I getting it wrong?
No, and on Jinx is actually really good if you think about it, because Jinx in combination with Rapid Fire and Stormrazor and her increased range from the rocket launcher can potentially launch an auto attack from like half the screen or like full screen distance, and suddenly her auto attacks become like a corky rocket in terms of poke. You know,
Yeah.
You just stack up the Stormrazor, you walk up with the Rapid Fire cannon range, and you auto attack them for some long range poke damage.
And you slow them, and you can auto attack them even more, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what if you combine this with a rapid fire cannon? No, not the other item that gives you 3 basic attacks. I forgot the name. You know what? The item that gives you 3 basic attacks.
The Chargeblade, or which one?
Quicksilver. No, I don't know what it's called. Like the bow. Okay, screw it. We're just gonna skip that one. So this is just generally a good item to get as your second, third item. And as you said, really good on Jinx, for example, because it allows you to slow the enemy, where you can continuously demolish them with those rockets, right?
Yeah.
And this item.
Again,
yeah. Sorry, you talk.
The energized ability also like stacks. So if you have a static shift, you can auto attack an enemy, and the bouncing lightning actually slows everyone for 75%.
Oh, that's interesting. So the lightning that bounce on the enemies, is gonna slow all of them for the 75%. So it would be incredibly good to combine. Well, on paper, it sounds really good to combine with the static shift, but you are gonna be lacking some damage for it though. So that's where the compensation comes for here with the low stats. Otherwise, this item would be beyond broken. It's pretty cheap, however. It costs 2,900 gold. So, is this a good item in general, would you say? Or very situational?
I think it's very situational. Like, a lot of these new items obviously are situational, but that is the beauty of like adapting your item build according to the game. Like if you master this trait, you will climb the ranks pretty easily by just having a better item build than the enemy every game, you know? If you think about like, do I need Stormrazor for the slow? Can I combine it with something, you know? Like these are all questions that you have to ask yourself in game.
Yeah, and that's why we're making this video right now. If you have no idea what to build and what the item does, you can just come back to this video. I'll put timestamps in the description for every single item as well. So you can just, you know, if you don't know what the Navori Quickblades is, boom, you go to the Navori and you can get the expert explanation from the Mozilla. All right, on to the next item, which is Crystalline Reflector, also known as the Guardian Angel for ability power champions. So this item gives you 45 armor, 60 ability power, 15 ability haste, but it's all about the passive, guys. So casting an ability grants you a stack of mirror shard, up to 3 stacks, and each mirror shard, by the way, this is wrong, I'm gonna take this away. Each mirror shard can block 10 plus 5% of your ability power damage. So it's not what's saying here, so forget about this. So basically, if you have 100 ability power, you're going to be blocking 10 plus 5% of 100, which is 5, so 15 flat damage. This is flat. So if the enemy's basic attack would have dealt 100 damage to you, you're going to be blocking 10 plus 5% of your ability power from that damage, right? And on top of that, you'll deal damage back to them equal to 20 plus 10% of your ability power. So it blocks damage and it deals damage. So Mozilla, what do you have to say about this item, the Crystalline Reflector?
I think it's a necessary item with all the crit items coming out, but it might also just be too strong on champions like Gragas, Diana maybe, who are like tanky in and of itself already and can utilize this item really well.
But
Like,
why
if you think
Gragas and
about it-
Diana? Because here it says casting an ability. So you would think champions that can cast a lot of abilities would really utilize this item really well, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Gragas' second ability doesn't have a lot of cooldown, and it already gives you damage reduction. It already gives you percentage damage reduction. So combined with this, it's even more damage reduction. And Diana can cast her third ability multiple times in a fight as well, giving you multiple mirror shots to block more damage in the fight.
That
Like,
sounds
these are
insane,
champions-
actually. Sounds really good.
These are champions that can utilize this really well. And this essentially goes hand in hand with like lethality champions, kind of like lethality champions like Zed, maybe even Kha'Zix being the losers of this patch. Because just having this on an AP champion just makes it really hard for Zed to kill them anymore.
So I'm just
Especially
going to
having-
quickly explain what lethality means. Lethality basically means flat armor penetration, right? Like when you go for the Umos Ghostblade, which gives you 15 flat armor penetration, this item is going to kill those items, really. Because you get the 45 armor, so it's just completely going to deny the lethality builds, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, especially because of the tier 2 item that's being added, Seeker's Arm Guard, being a cheap armor
here?
variant for AP champions. Just getting this early into any AD matchup is always like not a bad choice. It's not always the best choice, but it's never a bad choice into AD matchups.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this item sounds insane. Like when, as you said, when you're playing against a Kha'Zix and a Zed, for example, and you're playing Orianna, just get the Seeker's Arm Guard to get the 30 armor, and on top of that, it gives you 25 ability power too. And just sit on this item in the early game, and then when you approach the later stages of the game, get the Crystalline Reflector. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And Orianna also uses a lot of abilities. So like,
Yeah.
there's a world where maybe Orianna just becomes too tanky. Who knows?
Yeah. So we wrote down here that this is an absolute meta changer. It's an insanely powerful item versus attack damage champions. Is this gonna kill attack damage champions in the mid lane like Aurelia, Zed, and some others? Is it gonna kill them, or are they still gonna be fine?
I think Aurelia is still going to be fine just because of the fact that you can buy Wit's End, and Wit's End deals magical damage on hit.
Here.
So this
Yeah.
bypasses the armor threshold a little bit. As well as like just having a lot of DPS on Aurelia. You know, you're not one-shotting people, you're auto-attacking them multiple times. So you're not forced to like burn everything into like a fully stacked mirror shot from the enemy Akali, for example.
But what about Zed? Is it gonna be a Zed killer?
I mean, it's going to be really bad for Zed just in general. Like anyone that can buy early armor is going to counter Zed pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because Zed is never looking to buy like percentage armor penetration early
Exactly.
into the game.
It's a lethality champion, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. You want to one-shot squishy champions. You're not looking to focus the tanky ones. So you're going to be buying your Umos Ghostblade, maybe your Duskblade, who knows? And then you're going to be buying your potentially Mortal Reminder or Serylda's Grudge or Black Cleaver, depending on what you need.
Exactly.
So if you buy this as your second item on like a champion like Gragas, and you go Rod of Ages, you go this item.
Unkillable. For
exactly. You can't die anymore.
So here we wrote down it's a good early game item. And it's also good in the late game. It's just basically a good item in general versus attack damage champions. So we said it's good against Zed. So when you're laning against a Zed, you get this item. But what if you're laning against an ability power matchup but you're against 4 other attack damage champions? Would this be an item to consider in the late game where you go for it as your 3rd or 4th item on an ability power champion?
I think this is a situation where you can just sit on the Seeker's Arm Guard for the armor, because it's a lot cheaper just in general for like the amount of armor it gives. Because if you think about Crystalline Reflector, we don't know the exact cost of the item.
Yeah, we don't know the cost. Yeah, that kind of.
It's likely to be around like 3k gold. In which case, like Seeker's Arm Guard is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than this item. And if you just want the armor, it's better to just go for the Seekers. But if you're playing against any like high burst damage assassin, it's never a bad option. You know, it's always like a viable option that you can go for if you feel too threatened by the Kha'Zix, by the Rengar, by the Zed.
It's just gonna be Guardian Angel for ability power champions, right? It's the same.
Yeah.
But we don't. Do you think that this item is overtuned, undertuned? Do you think this item looks balanced? Well, actually, we don't know how much it costs, as you said. But if the item costs 3,000 gold, would this be a balanced item, or do you think it would be a bit better than a normal item?
I think the base stats are pretty bad for a 3,000 gold item, but the effect might just be strong enough to just warrant buying it anyway. Because if you think about like dealing 20 plus 10% of your ability power as damage to the enemy back, it's a lot of damage. Like even for your first item, if you think about it, you have this item, you have 60 ability power. Let's say you have a rune that enhances your ability power a little bit as well, and suddenly you're at like 70 ability power, and every time the enemy tries to hit you, they take like
27
30 damage or something, like 35 damage every time. I mean 25, not 35.
Yeah. That's a lot, and you're also going to be reducing their damage. So it's just a solid item, you would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, on to the next item. So now we got all the new items, the new tier 3 items, and oops, I need to take these away. So here we got the Grievous wounds changes, which is actually quite significant. So let's start with the Thornmill. The stats are still the same. This is still the same over here. Let's see if I can actually take my... Yeah, there it is. So this is all the same. However, here it changes from down here. Now it gives you 40% Grievous wounds for 3 seconds. But when you immobilize the enemy champion, or when the enemy champion is immobilized, it inflicts 60% Grievous wounds, which is a lot. Like this reduces the healing by a lot. So whenever the enemy is stunned, rooted, charmed, anything that's not just a slow, the Grievous wounds is going to be insane. So would you say that this is a buff or a nerf? Because they are nerfing it from 50 to 40%, but this is also added. What would you say about it?
I think in general, it's a nerf on a lot of champions. Like if you think about buying Thornmail, you're sometimes buying it on champions that don't have reliable immobilizing effects. You know, like a Malphite can only use his ultimate to immobilize you. But
his first ability doesn't do it, right? Because it only slows. It's only his ultimate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he still likes the item in general because it gives him a lot of armor, it gives him health. But he might just want to stay on the Bramble Vest and just buy a Randuin's, because a lot of crit items are coming into play this patch, and Randuin's is going to be profiting a lot. Let's
actually talk about the Randuin's real quick, because we're at the Grievous wounds, but I really want to ask some questions about the Randuin's, because is this item going to be amazing in the next phase? Is it going to be a broken item because of all the new crit items?
I think it's going to be really strong, just because of the crit items. Like a lot of people are going to enjoy playing crit champions, like with different item builds. Like you're going to see a lot of Yasuo, you're going to see a lot of like AD carries like Lucian using the Spellblade effect from Essence Reaver, just dashing around, hitting people. And it's just in general a very enjoyable play style. So you can be like the guy that sours the drink, you know, just buy Randuin's, just run them down.
Yeah, just block all the damage. Like when you're playing, especially these bruiser champions like Darius, I don't know, Jax, Riven, basically these tanky Baron laners. When you get that Randuin's Omen as your third or fourth item, like how tanky are you going to be? How annoying are you going to be to deal with when the enemy has like 3 crit champions, right? With all these new items where they will be picking Tryndamere, crit attack damage champion, and maybe even Yasuo. The Randuin's Omen is really going to be a party destroyer, as you said, right?
Yeah.
So on to the next item, which is the Oblivion Orb. This item used to give Grievous... No, sorry, this item used to give flat armor penetration, but now it's a component to the green book. To the green book, I still can't pronounce this word. And it gives you 40% Grievous wounds, and that's it, really. It gives you 40 ability power and the Grievous wounds. What do you have to say about this item?
So it also used to give you HP, like it used to give you a bit of HP and a little bit of less ability power. So now AP champions actually have an option for Grievous Wounds items, which they did not have before, because buying the green book, as you said, was not gold efficient in a lot of situations.
Just very expensive, right? To get just for the Grievous Wounds.
Exactly, it costs 3k gold. You would rather just have your carry buy an Executioner's Calling. In instead and just use that as a Grievous Wounds instead of buying it on a Ziggs. While in patch 2.4, you can actually buy this reliably on your AP champions.
The Oblivion Orb he's talking about, right? Just this item. It's going to be very cheap Grievous Wounds, as you said, on a Ziggs or on an Orianna, where you, after you finish your first item, maybe even your second item, you can just get the Oblivion Orb and continue building towards other items. Because the Green Book is not always going to be the best item. It's a solid item, of course, don't get me wrong, gives you a lot, but you don't necessarily need it anymore for the Grievous Wounds. You can just get the Grievous Wounds and then maybe continue building for the Rabadons or the Void Staff and things like that. This is basically the Executioner's Calling for ability power champions, right? This was necessary.
Yeah.
And we got a minor change. We got a minor change to the Executioner's Calling. A minor nerf, right? From 50% Grievous Wounds to 40.
Yeah, I mean, it's like mostly because of it gains like extra effects that potentially amplify to like 60%, like it does for Thornmail, for example, when you immobilize someone. So it's just better on like certain champions and nerfed on others. You have to like think about if your champion can utilize this item properly.
Yeah, it's still just going to be the Executioner's Calling, right? It just gives you 10% less Grievous Wounds, but it's still going to be a good buy on champions like Kai'Sa, Jinx, just ADC champions that just want to reduce the healing. It's just going to be like, you just buy this extra and then you continue building. Okay, exactly. So on to the next item is the Green Book. What do you have to say about this item? What changes did they do to this item? They only took away 10% of the Grievous Wounds, right?
Obviously, this sucks because the item was bad already, like before before losing 10% on the Grievous Wounds. But now, if you're buying Oblivion Orb, you already have a component for this item. So if you think about like having a quick item spike, like if you're clearing one wave before dragon spawn, you reset, and you don't have enough to buy your next item.
But you can get this item.
Finish the Green Book. Exactly. Yeah. You can finish the Green Book, and you get a little bit of worse stats, but you get a completed item, which in general has a lot more gold efficiency than like certain component items. So you will have a stronger spike at the dragon fight.
So basically what you're saying is you, as an ability power champ, you want to get the Oblivion Orb, and then you just want to sit on it as long as you can, and whenever you can get the Green Book, but you cannot get any other item, you just get it before an important team fight, just to get that power spike, maybe as your third item, fourth, maybe even delayed as your fifth item. That's what you're saying, right? So you never really want to finish the item unless, as like what we just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's very interesting to see. Like, we're not going to be seeing a lot of Green Books anymore. So it's basically just going to be Oblivion Orb, and then whenever you can, you get the Green Book. So we got more. Oh, wait, no, we got more here. The Mortal Reminder. Now, what happened to the Mortal Reminder? It used to be the same stats, but with what was it? With 50% Grievous Wounds. But now they changed it. So dealing physical damage meaning any physical damage, so not only basic attack. For example, Zed's first ability, anything like that. Dealing physical damage to enemy champions inflicts them with 40% Grievous Wounds. And if the enemy's health is lower than 50%, the Grievous Wounds will increase to 60%. I really like this. Man, my red thingy is not working anymore. I really like this. What do you think about this? Is this actually a buff or a nerf to the item?
If you think about how people use their healing abilities, you know, they're not going to heal you when you're at 80% HP, you know?
Yeah.
They're going to heal you when you drop lower. And if they heal you too late, suddenly they will lose 20% on the healing because you hit them before with Mortal Reminder.
60% is a lot.
Yeah, you have to think about how you use your healing if the enemy buys Mortal Reminder now. And again, in general, I think this is probably a very slight nerf because people tend to not run around with 50% HP. They back, they heal up, you know. But in team fights, this could potentially be a massive buff. If the people drop low and then the Sonar tries to heal them or the Soraka tries to use their ultimate, and suddenly it's 60% less healing, and they just think, where did my ultimate go, you know?
Yeah, I honestly feel like they should have added this passive to the Green Book as well to make it a balanced item. Like they should have made the same passive for the Green Book. Because it really doesn't make sense that you only just get the 40% here, and here you get the 60%. Because that makes like the Mortal Reminder. Is it gonna be the same as the Green Book, where you just get the Execution Scaling and just sit on it, or is the Mortal Reminder gonna be worth it? I would say it's worth it because you get the 30% armor penetration as well from this item, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mortal Reminder has always been worth it, and it's just like a very slight knock onto its like maybe early game strength, because a lot of people are going to be basing before they're 50% HP. But the problem with giving it to the Morellonomicon, the Green Book, is that
Wow.
a lot of AP champions have long range poke, they have AoE abilities, they have damage over time abilities, if you think about like a Cinch, for example. And if you give this onto these champions, they will abuse it extremely hard if the Grievous wounds is too strong. So you will have to like have a lower ratio of Grievous wounds compared to the Mortal Reminder.
Okay. Very interesting. It's very interesting to hear. So next up, we actually have an item that got changed, which is the Bloodthirster. So Bloodthirster used to be, I would say, quite an underwhelming item on most champions. No one really built it except for Draven players. And the changes that they made to this item is the item used to give you 65 attack damage and then the healing, right? Basically the same passive. So they took away 25 attack damage and they added 25% crit. Now what that means is it's gonna suck in the early game, right? Am I right here? Like, is this gonna be a big nerf in the early game, but a good buff for the late game when you have a full crit champion?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like the gold efficiency of items, the Brawler's Glove, the 500 gold crit item, gives you 10% crit chance, you know?
Yeah.
So, and the Longsword gives you 15 AD, 15 attack damage. So essentially 25 attack damage is actually lower gold efficiency than 25% crit. So this item is actually like gold efficiency wise, it's better. But because in the early game you don't have a lot of crit already and crit scales with itself really well, you still don't want to buy this as your first item. Even on Draven maybe. Like you want to buy
because you're
the
losing 25 attack damage. You're literally losing 25 attack damage for 25% crit, which is absolutely horrible in the early game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now champions that build Blade of the Ruined King beforehand, think about another lifesteal option that also gives you crit that curves better into your item build.
Jinx.
Like if you're playing a Jinx, for example, exactly. If you don't have a Lulu and you can't like utilize the attack speed from Blade of the Ruined King properly, you might just want to build Bloodthirster as your third item or something. Just go.
But what do you go for your first item then, instead of the Blade of the Ruined King?
It's probably gonna be the Infinity Edge or maybe a Stormrazor, depending on like how strong the spike will be at the first dragon. You know, like just having the slow might be really good.
Yeah.
But in general, just the Infinity Edge is always a solid option.
So what I was thinking is that this is gonna be an insane item for Draven, where you go for an Infinity Edge as your first item, and then you could potentially get this as your second item. Is this gonna be an absolutely insane item on Draven? Or is it gonna be just fine?
If you think about it, Draven doesn't use attack speed very well.
Yeah.
He gains attack speed obviously from a second ability. So maybe there's a world where you build Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, and then Essence Reaver. And suddenly you have 75% crit chance with a shit ton of AD.
Jesus, look at that. You gotta oh my god, that actually what you just said. And then after dealing ability damage, ooh, would that work with Draven's Access?
That would work with Draven's Access, and you can
no
buy
way.
Serylda's Grudge to finish this whole package off, having your enhanced auto attacks from your first ability, slowing for 30%.
Oh my god, yes.
Like this might just be like a patch where Draven just starts dominating.
Holy moly, that actually makes so much sense. Where you just go for the Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, Essence Reaver, and then this scales really well with the crit, right? You're gonna be dealing extra damage, and whenever you use the Access on Draven, it's ability damage. So every time you use the Access, you're gonna be dealing even more damage. So Draven S tier, Draven S plus tier. I'm gonna have to try it out. Yeah, we're gonna have to see.
It's a difficult champion.
Yeah, it's a difficult champion, but these changes, like I immediately thought of Draven with these changes. So on to the next item, which is Prophet's Pendant. This is a tier 2 item, and this builds into, what does it build into? The Infinity Orb and the Green Book. So it gives you 125 maximum health, 25 ability power, and the flat armor penetration. Basically the new Infinity Orb, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what do you have to say about this item? Is it gonna be any good, any changing, or just another item?
I mean, it's just your typical like ability power magic penetration item that you buy for like an Infinity Orb build. I in general like the tier 2 item for Void Staff a little bit more. Because
which is the thing that gives you 20% penetration, right?
Yeah, exactly, 20% penetration. It obviously in some situations 15 flat magic penetration is going to be better. But these champions will then just sit on this item and not upgrade it to like an Infinity Orb, because Infinity Orb got nerfed pretty hard like a couple patches ago.
Yeah, it became more expensive.
And it's really expensive now.
Yeah, so we're likely not going to be seeing a lot of this item, right? Because as we said earlier, the Green Book is not going to be an item that is likely going to be finished too often, because it's just not really worth it anymore. So this item, it's just there, but it's not really going to be a game changer, right?
Yeah.
Wait, did we just... Oh, yeah, no, that was it. So final thoughts.
I think we skipped the Crystalline Bracer and the Seeker's Arm Guard, the magic armor items.
Oh, okay, we can just record it after this one real quick. That'll be fine. Don't worry, I'll edit it in. So let's do the final thoughts now. And yeah, also, yeah, we've already talked about the ability power items. You have to think about that. Well, what happened? What's gonna happen? Crit items. We got a lot of defensive items. We got a lot of changes. What's gonna happen in the new patch?
So we're gonna be seeing a lot more AD carries rise up to the occasion. A lot of ability haste providing champions that use ability haste very, very well, like the Lucian, for example, who has been lacking in the AD carry position a little bit. He might just be like an S tier AD carry now with a lot of ability haste options.
And Draven.
Exactly, Draven uses the items really well. A lot of new AD items. Potentially Yasuo is going to be really strong with the Solari Chargeblade.
Tryndamere. How about Tryndamere?
Tryndamere is. I think Tryndamere might still be like bad, like not bad in a general sense, but just bad because of the new AP armor item. Not allowing him to like do anything against like some AP matchups. But if you get the right matchup, if you get the right comp, you can just run them over with Tryndamere. If they don't have too much CC, like you can pop your Ghost, maybe you can pop your Glorious Enchant. I like to play with him a lot, and then just auto attack them, spin behind them, just keep critting. You can use it that way. And obviously tanks that build Randuin's are going to profit a lot from...
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. The Randuin's Omen. Like, is that going to be the denier of this patch? Yeah, because, you know, all the nice crit items, this is so nice, we can get so much crit damage, blah, blah, blah. But Randuin's Omen is going to be a stomp in their face, is it?
Yeah, now if you see like a tank Gragas, maybe like an AP off-tank Gragas where you build the Rod of Ages, then the new AP item for extra armor, and then curve it out into a Randuin's Omen. Ooh. Suddenly you're unkillable for enemy AD champions.
Yeah,
and you still deal a lot of damage. And then your supporter has Staff of Flowing Water, so you gain extra ability power. You know this all.
Yeah, it's all just really good. Yeah. So I want to ask about Kai'Sa, because Kai'Sa has always really been dominating the ADC role. For a few months already. Is she gonna drop down a little bit? Because I feel like these items are not gonna be the best for Kai'Sa, because they're insanely strong on champions like Jinx, Lucian. We talked about Draven as well. Is Kai'Sa gonna fall off a little bit then?
I think Kai'Sa is still just like really solid in the late game. Her early game might just be like lacking a little bit now, because there are some champions that just get really good one item power spikes, like Draven, for example. Just runs her down in lane if you play it properly.
Yeah.
But I still think Kai'Sa is going to be really strong, just because of how easy it is to maneuver her in team fights. You can survive a lot of engages. You can survive a lot of burst champions with your shield and your stealth in the later stages of the fight.
All right.
It's just really hard to get onto a Kai'Sa as a melee champion.
All right. So after we record the other items as well, this is going to be way over an hour. Jesus, man. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and big shout out to Mozilla for joining, man. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Like I always really loved Mozilla. I really always ask him for questions in my videos. I always mention his name, but I thought, why the hell not just make a video with him? So I really hope you guys enjoyed making the video as well. Please let me know in the comments what you think about it, and if you want to see him more, maybe. So thank you so much, Mozilla. I had a lot of fun with you, and I learned a lot as well. So, do you have anything to say?
No, I just want to thank you for like giving me this platform to educate people, and it was just a pleasure like talking to you. And again, we're like just in general, if anyone has any questions, I can also hop into the YouTube comment section, maybe answer some of them.
Oh, that would be cool. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. He'll be, if he has time, if he wants to, he will answer some of the questions. So yeah, I'll put that in the top comment as well. So enough about that. The video is so long. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I will see. Wait, I need to do it like this. I will see you all in the next WildRift video. Bye bye.